Hello, everyone, friends from around the world. I'm Felipe Hoffa. I'm live. I'm happy to have you on YouTube Live, on LinkedIn Live. I'm in California, and today I have two awesome guests, directors of product at Snowflake. They oversee so many products, so many features. We are waiting for Summit next week. They know a lot about what's going to happen. Maybe they're going to tell me what's going to happen or not. But I'm super happy to welcome James Malone and Jeff Hollan. How are you doing, James and Jeff?
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, it's James and I were just talking before the show. It is crunch time right now. Like there's a whole lot going on, but everything's going great.
Yes. How, from 1 to 10, how relaxed are you right now?
James, I'll let you go
I don't
first.
know. Is 10 relaxed or is 10 not relaxed? I don't know.
Yeah,
Let's say,
maybe one in terms of relax. There's a lot
yes.
going on. There's a lot going on.
And we're super hyped, super excited for next week. And we have friends from Oreluba, from Chicago, New York, Jeff, India, Budapest, Israel, Atlanta, New York, Costa Rica, Lebanon. Hi, Poland. I think we are
And
ready
Dee Dee
to
Walsh is
start.
on too. I see some familiar names popping up too of people we've worked with. So great to have you all joining in too.
Didi Walsh, Emma Stahl, oh, so many friends online. Please stop by, say hi. This is going to be an exciting session. By the way, I told people that you are directors of product, James and Jeff, but James first, how many products or how many features of Snowflake do you oversee?
So I jokingly refer to my team as a funnel because we broadly do two things. One, we want to make Snowflake work with data wherever it happens to be, and that's typically storage. But we want to make it easy. Most data platforms want you to bring data to the platform. We want to bring the platform to data wherever it is. The other half of my team focuses on all things data engineering. So ingestion, transformation, streaming, alerting, notifications, orchestration, all of the tools you need in a toolbox to go build data pipelines.
That's a lot. Can you throw some keywords?
Some keywords.
Yes,
I mean, I said a few.
I know.
Streaming, transformation, ingestion, data engineering, data
Snowpipe.
pipelines, Iceberg, storage, data lake, data mesh.
That's a lot. And what did you say for Jeff?
So my world right now, most of what I've been focusing on is Snowpark. So all things, whenever you're writing Java, Scala, Python, and you want to run that in Snowflake or use libraries to help you do it. So that's a bunch of what my team is helping run and build, as well as just developer and developer platform improvements across the board. So very exciting space right now, and we'll even talk about a few blogs here coming up that folks in the community have been writing to show about their experiences using these products, which James and I are both always looking at what people are posting, trying to interact. In fact, I think part of what inspired even this LinkedIn Live theme was James was interacting with a few folks on either Reddit or LinkedIn or something, and was like, we should do more just like product updates to the community and have some interaction to share what's top of mind and answer questions.
Yes. So we are ready to answer questions. We want to see what people have been writing. This is a super exciting time because announcements are coming next week. But this is a time that people have to ask us questions and learn what's happening deep in the product in Snowflake. And speaking of what's happening around us, let's talk. I know James wrote a blog post like last week about streaming, so I would love to talk about streaming. But before that, let's look at some blog posts that people have been writing. What do you have for us here, James? What is this?
Yeah. Or I'll call some of these out. This is my
Excellent.
screen that I'm sharing right now, so I'll walk through it
Oh,
really quickly. There's three here. There's many more. I was reading. I was looking at my reading list of a bunch of folks in the community have written. These were three that I really liked. One of them is Komodo Health. Actually, Felipe, I almost feel like you should be the one to talk through this. So Komodo Health wrote this blog. We'll post the links to these in the description of the video after the fact, but you could probably find this one on your own too. This goes through how Komodo Health did 50% cost savings. But Felipe, how do you describe this blog as well? Maybe I'll let you give the tagline for this one.
one, I love the story. It shows our customers that saving cost in Snowflake using the latest features, the best best practices. As I would say, this blog post has everything. It talks about cost savings. It talks about Snowpark. They are using dynamic tables. They are in private preview right now, but let's see what news we have next week. They're using SQL forecasting. It's a customer testimonial. They are presenting all of this at the summit session next week. So yeah, it has everything. Anything you'd like to call out about Snowpark here?
I love lines like this, and if you like listen to James or Josh or I on LinkedIn, we'll always try to highlight these. But these types of numbers is what's really exciting. 70% performance improvement and 50% cost reduction. So that's a lot of the combination of these features. Snowpark Optimize, Snowpark, SQL forecasting, dynamic tables, super exciting. So the other one I want to highlight, this is actually a super useful one. This is from Alon, and apologies, Alon, if I'm saying your name wrong, from Infostructs. This one's on Medium. This is a super informative blog post that talks about, okay, if I'm looking at Snowflake or using Snowflake, I have a few options right now. I have Spark. There's a Snowflake connector for Spark. There's also Snowpark. And this is just a super useful blog post that walks down, okay, what are the differences? Like what will be different between maybe choosing the Spark connector for Snowflake versus Snowpark, and where you might want to consider each one, because both of them will involve processing on Snowflake. It'll go through some of the experience differences, the price and performance differences. Super informative. So that's just a great one, and appreciate folks in the community helping share some of these learnings and insights. And you can see, again, in terms of calling out, I love lines around stuff like Snowpark providing this revolutionary leap forward, which is absolutely something we're seeing, and bringing more of that processing right alongside the data. So that's the one I wanted to flag there. And then the third one, before we can jump into James.
I have to say,
go for it, Felipe.
And I just love how they know Spark. They have been using Spark. They have been connecting Snowpark to Snowflake. But when trying Snowpark, they just saw a lot of their processes get simpler, get faster, and that's huge. Thank you, Snowpark team.
Yeah, and actually, really quickly, Jeff, I do want to chime in. There's
Please.
a question I think Vlad was asking, like why everybody's so happy. And that, going back to that Komodo Health example with dynamic tables, which I'll talk about in a minute. That's private preview, and customers are already seeing the efficiency improvements and the speed improvements, which was precisely why we designed it. So to see such a good realization of outcomes with something that's in private preview, it was not to be happy about. We've built something, people like it, and it does what we built it to do. That's excellent.
Yes, but I think even before the show, Felipe, when you were doing the pre-game stuff, you were like, "We're happy and we're building awesome stuff." So to James's point, maybe that's why we're all so happy. Lots of exciting things. Okay, and then the third one was also from Infostructs. So shout out to Infostructs. This one from Fabian, which is around some topics that are understandably quite interesting right now. So this is deploying pre-trained LLMs into Snowflake. And Fabian does a great job of walking through how you can use Snowpark UDFs, stages, and actually to run LLM logic right within your Snowflake account using some transformer libraries from Hugging Face. You can see the code is in here. I always love blog posts that include the code samples that you need to go try this out yourself. Using JobLib, which is a Python library used for spinning up parallel jobs and doing kind of distributed processing. So very cool use case, has some nice considerations here too, a good set of conclusions. So a fun little scenario if folks are interested in playing around with LLMs in Snowflake that you can go start using today. So thanks, Fabian.
Yes, this is one that I really need to play with. I have it on my to-do list. Once I get all my summit talks done, I'm installing my own LLMs in Snowflake, and I'm happy to have this step by step.
Great.
I do have a question. And I think the answer is in one of these blog posts from Adarsh. Is any use case for healthcare industry that your suite of products are, or in future planning? Any insights? And it's like, yes, we do work with healthcare. We have the certifications needed to work in that space. So if we go to the first paragraph of this blog post, what is Komodo Health all about?
Yes. So right here, patient data, life sciences, clinical data, AI-powered software. They're doing all that today, and as you can see, they're able to bring up a bunch of these use cases right in Snowflake.
Exactly. And this is critical data that should be managed with the top levels of security or preserving privacy. So I have this other question of when Snowflake consumes data, is there a setup to modify fields so PII is not exposed? Yes, yes. Governance policies, data masking works really well on Snowflake. So hopefully you can go deeper into that topic. Maybe we should have, if we could invite Ghana and Dinesh Kumar on a future live, that would be really interesting. So we can talk about their talk.
That'd be awesome. It would be great to have a few guest panelists in one of these upcoming updates. And then last but not least was a phenomenal blog post. Maybe had a few grammatical or typos. No, it was awesome. From our own James Malone, the man himself.
Oh boy.
James, you may as well give a plug on. You've actually been on a blogging frenzy. Speaking of it being crunch time right now,
yes.
I don't know where you found the time.
Sitting in an airplane seat where I have shoddy Wi-Fi and a bunch of thoughts and opinions, and writing a blog post in offline mode is excellent. So yes, and I've been trying to weave an interesting line here on sharing some upcoming news without necessarily talking about what we're going to cover at Summit, because that tends to make people inside of Snowflake sad. This first post I wrote about a week ago covers different streaming options in Snowflake. And this has become one of the hot questions for customers that are doing streaming inside of Snowflake, because now we'll really have kind of two different ways of building streaming applications between streams and tasks and dynamic tables. So this is intended to help clarify or guide which one customers should choose based on kind of three different questions. So you could ask yourself, like, whether do you want a declarative or imperative model? Do you want something that's more manual or automatic? Because sometimes people just want to delegate to a system. Sometimes people want to have more control. And also the third piece on is your streaming pipeline going to change over time? Is it going to be static? And it sort of feeds into the automatic versus manual. But will you want to make this run faster or slower and vary with your business needs? Or is it pretty much just run at a set speed and it's on cruise control? And the goal here, there's really not a one size fits all. And you'll see this outside of streaming as well. There's not just one product to do one thing. There's purpose-built products for different use cases, because that meets the customer where they are, and that's completely intentional on our part. So this is hopefully makes it a little clearer on which one to choose. And there's also, as you're showing, some shameless plugs to our sessions on streaming and ingest and dynamic tables, because there will be some news around dynamic tables at Summit, along with maybe some demos in a few important places as well.
Yes. So to call out the 4 sessions, reduce ingestion costs with Snowpipe streaming and dynamic tables. That's what Komodo Health is doing right now. Someone is going to present of what's new with streaming with Snowflake. Dynamic tables under the hood. We're going to understand how dynamic tables work. And building pipelines with dynamic tables. So I guess we have a lot of announcements around dynamic tables.
And it's also not just announcements as well. Like the 307 session, the dynamic tables under the hood, there's some of the engineers who have built dynamic tables and who have built streaming technologies in previous lives are going to be at Summit giving the talk. So if you want to dive into the technical nitty gritty, it will be a great time to actually go approach the engineers and have in-depth conversations. And they're excited to go to Summit to specifically deep dive into these topics. So there's more utility beyond just the Summit session itself.
Vegas is going to be fun. But going back to the blog post, let's go a little more in depth with each of the questions you are asking here, because it's a really interesting topic. You have 4 questions, and the first one is declarative or imperative.
Yes.
What do you mean by this?
Okay. So in short, do you want to specify how something should work, or do you want to specify the outcome? And you don't necessarily care about how something works. we've had streams and tasks in Snowflake. We continue to have them. We're continuing to innovate and build on them. And it's very much you're specifying how things should work, how each step should work, how it should be orchestrated, when things should be scheduled. With dynamic tables, you're specifying the outcome. You want a table to look like a specific thing, and you give us a set time to refresh. Different teams want different types of mechanisms. So the first big question, probably one of the biggest questions, is which one will work for your team, for your organization, for your use case? Do you really want to be hands-on and tune all of the knobs? And that's what some teams want to do, and it suits their use case, which is great. Or do you want to just say, here's what the outcome should look like of this particular streaming pipeline. I don't care how it gets done. Snowflake, you do the hard work and figure it all out for me. And that's very much a declarative model.
Yeah, I think a lot about how classically in DBT, I'm telling DBT, these are the selects, the transformations I want to do, and the steps. And DBT figures out the steps and what to do first, what to do then. Yeah. With dynamic tables, I can keep using DBT, but instead of running DBT periodically to get the transformations with dynamic tables, I'm just saying, this is the state I want. And Snowflake will keep that state working. Is that right?
Yes. And I don't want to steal too much thunder from the dynamic tables team. But what's really cool about dynamic tables, you could have a series of transformations. So I want to have 3 different tables, and each one is a refinement on a previous table. You can join dynamic tables together. So you can build a really complicated data engineering pipeline with just a few simple SQL statements. On the back end, Snowflake will look at the graph that you've built because these tables are joined together. We'll figure out how to refresh all of these in the right order so we're not refreshing on stale data. And an important point, all of these refreshes are also happening incrementally. So you're not paying to do a full refresh on stale or unchanged data. So we're trying to do something really complicated here by handling all of the control flow logic for you, handling all of the incrementalization for you, so you don't have to think about like change data capture or like complicated streams. All of that is abstracted away, and you say, I want a table to look like this, and here's how it should get fed with data. We'll handle the rest. And as you mentioned, the nice thing, dynamic tables will work with outside tools like DBT. So you can join both what you like outside of Snowflake with the kind of newest advancements that we have for declarative processing in Snowflake.
Nice. And so that goes to your second question in this post, which is automatic or manual.
Yes. Yeah. So with streams and tasks, and again, there's no wrong answer here. It's really what works for you and your teams. With something like streams and tasks, you're specifying when and how things should get run. So you will create tasks and say, refresh, run this refresh or run this process at the specific time or when the specific event happens. Typically, you're going to be building much more kind of complicated logic for a particular application. Conversely, the goal with dynamic tables, there's a lot of customers, and part of our thesis on why streaming has not gotten a lot of adoption is it's still really hard because in addition to thinking about your streaming pipeline, you have to think about orchestration, you have to think about changing data streams, you have to rationalize this really complicated picture. So with dynamic tables, we're trying to automate or put on autopilot as much as possible. So you're thinking with dynamic tables about, okay, I want a table to go from this to this to this, but you do not have to think about tasks and when things get done. You don't have to think about the streams. All of that becomes automatic. And again, you can choose which one will work for your use case, and it's not going to be a one-size-fits-all. Dynamic tables may not suit every use case, and streams and tasks may not suit every use case. It's to really give that option between knobs or kind of automatic tuning.
Yes. And that's your last question is, how will this pipeline change over time?
Yes. So this is more of our opinion on streaming, but I think it's a really important point. Often streaming is approached with the perception of, I'm going to run the streaming pipeline at this specific pace forever. I'm a retailer and I want to, run a stream of my order pipeline every 30 seconds. You may want to do that for a month out of the year, but then, the other 11 months out of the year, you're okay dialing down how quickly your streaming pipeline is running to maybe once every hour because you're not in a peak holiday shopping season. Streaming is a continuum. it's not, as fast as you can go and as slow as you can go. And part of our goal with dynamic tables is to allow customers to very easily dial up or dial down on that continuum to make things faster or slower, the entire pipeline. Because we think that's actually meeting a lot of streaming needs, because we see people sometimes want to stream, sometimes don't want to stream. We want to make it very easy to move on that continuum pipeline. There are going to be some use cases where you want to, run things as quickly as possible all the time, like the canonical fraud detection, IoT manufacturing use cases, very valid. But we think there's even bigger bulk of use cases that are going to sometimes need to run really, really quickly. And then sometimes, because you don't want to spend the cost, can run a bit slower. And answering that question is going to either put you in streams and tasks to run really quickly all the time, or dynamic tables to run at the pace you select depending on your need.
That's so cool. And you have the dials. Yes.
Yes. The dial is just a simple parameter. So you just specify, refresh this every 60 seconds, refresh this every 5 minutes, refresh this every hour. That's all you have to change. We've also added, what's really cool about this, and I can nerd out a lot about this, and if you're at all curious, again, there's some summit sessions. You can have a dynamic table refresh based on what its preceding tables are doing. So you don't have to go specify even the lag for the whole pipeline. You can specify just how quickly you want a part of a pipeline to refresh, and the rest will automatically re-architect itself.
That's cool. What do you think, Jeff?
It's awesome. Like I think to James' point, in as he was talking, I was even just thinking through a few scenarios that I've been working with folks with in terms of, like everything, there's never a one size fits all, and even a one point in time fits all points in time. So the fact that you have these options, I'm a huge fan of dynamic tables and that level of abstraction, but it's always nice to know where it's like, oh, I need a little bit more, that you have that flexibility as well to go build the kind of tasks and streams approach. So very, very cool stuff.
Something I'm really excited about is using Python with dynamic tables, because getting people to that point of, yes, and this is where we're layering on all the functionality. Because I see a kind of good trinity being, I want to use Python on dynamic tables. So I have Python, Snowflake's handling the complicated work of processing, and my underlying table format is Iceberg. I see that as a great place to go, and I will say that's on the minds of a lot of us, because that gets people, Python, open formats, and Snowflake takes care of the complicated application logic.
Yes. And this is something that I love about Snowflake compared to other places I've worked at, is that here PMs talk to each other. You have Snowpark on one side, you have streaming on one side, and where everything is working together. And you were mentioning, Jeff, you've been talking, of course, you speak a lot with customers. And I have a question coming here from the forums. What patterns are you seeing in the Snowpark? How customers deploy Snowpark?
I think the main one, it's actually very related to what James was saying today. They're primarily using with tasks. The canonical scenario that I think we see the most of, and so that if anybody here on this call is in this bucket, I would say you should go try it out, is you have data that is being ingested or already ingested into Snowflake in some form or fashion, and you want to build some form of a data engineering pipeline. And often, I'll tell you the sweet spot is, oh, we're doing this today, but we're using Spark in some form or fashion. And so what generally happens today when you're using Spark like that is you're pulling that data out of Snowflake, going and doing some processing in Spark, whatever you need to do there, and then it kind of gets pushed back in. Maybe you're using like a medallion style architecture where you've got bronze, silver, gold. Taking that same use case and saying, hey, what if we replace the elements here that we might be using something like Spark with today with Snowpark? That alone just provides a huge amount of price performance benefits. The data's not moving around. We're able to optimistically push more of the processing down. We have a full view, like the Snowflake engine has a full view of the thing to the left or right. So there's more, like we talked about LLMs, data science, but I would say the biggest pattern that we're seeing the most adoption, and I would encourage folks, if you've got anything that sounds like what I've said, you should try out Snowpark. That is the one that's like time and time again, the email or the conversation or whatever we have after the fact is, wow, that it was so much faster and so much less expensive because of all the goodness that we've layered on top. So that would be the one I would point people to.
Yeah, if people didn't see our live 2 weeks ago with Nick, we had a great demo. We have this Spark code. we are going to comment these lines, import Snowpark, and suddenly everything's running inside Snowflake without moving data. We did sentiment analysis. We added Python UDFs. So that we have the typical question: is Snowpark only transforming Python to SQL? No.
Mm.
And I'm sure, Jeff, you've explained this many times.
Yes, there's a few questions we always do of like, oh, okay, so what is this? Is Snowpark just Python to SQL? And of course, a huge part of it is the fact that we are able to translate a bunch of the operations and turn it into commands to Snowflake. But for me, the part that I get the most excited about is weaving in like Python libraries, Python logic that actually gets hosted and scaled along with your data. So it's not just we're moving data around and you just happen to describe it in Python. We're actually injecting in Python logic and letting you describe Python or Java or Scala, JavaScript. You know the story. I love all of the languages equally. Python just tends to be the one, and the data spaces everybody knows where most of the gravity is aligning around. That's where it gets super exciting. It's like the ecosystem of Python, the logic of Python, pushing that down to your data. Very, very exciting.
Oh, speaking of Python, is Snowflake stuck on Python 3.8?
So look, we're not going to pull any announcements from SummitUp, but luckily this one did go out on docs, and we have some amazing advocates who flagged on this. So if you go poke around our doc site right now for Snowflake and Snowpark specifically, you will see that there is the way to run Python 3.9 and Python 3.10. I'll give a slight disclaimer in that like 3.10, there is like one piece of it. I think the Anaconda publishing their Conda channel that has the latest 3.10 is rolling out like today or something. So be aware of that if you're doing 3.10. But that's the earliest glimpse of an announcement that we'll share today without saving the rest for Summit next week, which hopefully everybody is able to attend or live stream. But yes, that's huge request. I think Felipe, your post might have even said, finally, Python 3.9, 3.10. And I almost made a joke of like, what do you mean finally?
Yeah, I'm waiting for it. But I love that the big problem we're solving here is having multiple runtimes. Going from 1 to 3 or from 1 to 2, that's the complex problem. Now we can expect a different pace.
Very true. Yes. Yeah. One of the frequent questions we get is, great, now you have 3.9, 3.10. What about, 3.11 and 3.12 will come out this year? To your point, the heavy lifting that happened with this feature was making it so we could, somebody gives us Python code and we can dynamically choose and have an environment that could run n number of languages. We built that now to get, 3.9, which is also why we tacked on 3.10. Initially, we're like, let's just do 3.9 for now. We're like, it's actually not too hard. So it's not going to be day of release we have a new version because the package ecosystem and everything needs to catch up. But you can expect we'll have a pretty regular click of Python versions as those continue to release.
Cool. We're almost out of time, but James, do we have time for one more question for you?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I always have time for questions.
Speaking of myth, what about these posts that say that Delta tables are faster than Iceberg? Is that true?
I will say if you're benchmarking a table format, you're doing it wrong because that table format is being used by an engine. So at the end of the day, all you're doing is benchmarking an engine. And what you often see is that Spark is faster or slower with some things because Spark is intertwined with some table formats other than others. I will be vague here and I will say at Summit, you will see some good indications that Iceberg is very, very fast because we've been able to make it. When I say very fast, I mean very fast in Snowflake. So I wouldn't say a table format is faster or slower. Engines are faster or slower. Some engines are more or less optimized. And, our goal is to bring Snowflake to open formats. So I think as we continue to do that, people will see it's not a table format. It's actually the engine, and the table format being faster or slower is honestly more misdirection than anything.
So let's fight misdirection. Let's celebrate next week all of the announcements. Thank you so much. This has been an incredible half an hour. Any closing words, James, Jeff?
I'll just go quickly. And James, I don't know if there's anything for you. First one, if you are going to Summit, all of us here will actually be there and a bunch of folks from our team. So if you see us walking around, please do not hesitate to just say hi, whatever. Let us know if you have any questions that we weren't able to answer. And we'll go through. I know there were a few that came in the content so we weren't able to answer live. And then the only other one is we do want to do a fairly regular set of just giving updates, sharing insight of what's happening in the product. If there's even topics like you're like, oh, hey, I would love to hear from the, SQL query optimizer team in an upcoming LinkedIn Live. Like, let us know. We love to do this. And as James said, we always have time. We always have time for questions. So, James, I'll hand it over to you. I don't know if you have any.
I'll be at Summit along with a lot of my team. I will say it's not just Summit. If you want to talk, just bug me on LinkedIn, bug people on my team on LinkedIn. We'll talk to you pretty much anytime, anywhere, because we're only successful if customers are successful. So bug us, heckle us. We're here to help.
We are here to help. We are here to have conversations. Send us your questions. If you want to have any awesome guests here, we can make it happen. Thank you, James. Thank you, Jeff. Next week is going to be exciting. Thank you, everyone, for showing up.
See you all there.
Bye.
Bye.